Good afternoon, everyone. How are we enjoying Festival Saturday so far? If this is your first event, welcome to the Nantucket Book Festival. My name is Tim Ehrenberg. I'm the president of the Book Foundation. I always like to take every opportunity to thank our top donors, Richie Battle, Ellen and Linwood Dame, Randy and Lisa Cohn, Elizabeth Galvin, Mary and Robert Haft, Adam and Ramona Nee, Nancy Seaman and Alan Schwartz, Beth Wilkinson and David Gregory, and our top sponsors, the White Elephant and the Boston Globe. If we can please take a moment to silence your cell phones, but before you do that, if you have Instagram and you want to give @Nantucket Book Festival a follow, I would really appreciate it. Remember, Anne will be signing books after the talk right outside, and thank you for being here. I have a few choice phrases, mantras when I think of Ann Patchett. I call her my literary fairy godmother. I say I would read her grocery list. Lately, I've said that when the world is feeling a little bleak, I always am like, it's gonna be okay because Ann Patchett exists. She is truly one of my favorite novelists and humans, and I'm so thrilled to have her here at the Nantucket Book Festival. She really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. Ann Patchett is the author of novels. Most recently, this week, the #1 New York Times bestseller, Whistler. Works of nonfiction and children's books and new on shelves this month, Whistler. She has been the recipient of numerous awards, including the Penn Faulkner, the Women's Prize for Fiction in the UK, and the Book Sense Book of the Year. Her novel, The Dutch House, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Her work has been translated into more than 30 languages, and Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. President Biden awarded her the National Humanities Medal in recognition of her contributions to American culture. She lives in Nashville, Tennessee, where she is the owner of Parnassus Books. Please join me in welcoming, and I can't say her name without saying, the beloved Ann Patchett.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ann.
This is what I want to know. Did you read my notes? Did you read my speech notes?
No, I was too scared that I would feel too bad. I didn't sleep at all. It's like I stole Ann Patchett's idea.
No, I was just trying to ride your coattails. And can I say before we start, well, one, thank you all for being here, but that last session was phenomenal. I got so much out of that, and I loved it. So you're putting on a great festival, and I'm already learning and growing and getting things out of it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm more of a fiction reader, but to prepare for this interview, I really wanted to start reading your nonfiction. And so I want to start with your essay, The Getaway Car. And you write, I was always going to be a writer. I've known this for as long as I've known anything. I'm wondering why? How did you know that?
I think that it had to do with the fact that I didn't go to school very much when I was a child. My parents got divorced. We moved from California to Nashville the week before I turned 6. And I have an early December birthday. So we got to Nashville on Thanksgiving Day with the idea that we were going to be there for 3 weeks and then go back. And we didn't ever go back, but we couldn't quite commit to the fact that we weren't going back. This is me, my sister, and my mother. And we didn't go to school because we were going to go back. And I had already started first grade in Los Angeles. And then we just moved and moved and moved. So I really didn't learn how to read until I was in the 3rd grade. And I became a really clever kid and a storyteller. But I often wonder if saying I want to be a writer when I was so young was me saying I would like to learn how to write. I would like to learn how to make my letters because I didn't know how to do that. Wow. I would still be in the 1st grade if I wasn't a very clever storyteller.
Do you think that question has changed for you? Like, why do you write now?
You know, this is my job. And I kind of can't say it enough. I love my job, and I'm so lucky to have this job, but it is my job. And I write because It's how I keep the ecosystem of my life and many other people's lives going. It's just a huge privilege, I think, to write is to know that everything is okay. If you have food and shelter and good health and some sense of security, art is the thing that comes after that. If you are out in a storm and you're trying to make your way someplace to safety, you're not going to be writing. So it's a privilege, it's a luxury, and if I didn't get to do it anymore, I would be sorry and I would still be alive. Yeah, I said this in an interview months before this book came out. I was interviewed by a Buddhist magazine called Tricycle, and the woman was asking me, how I write, and I said, I wrote this book in a very different way. This was I had just actually finished writing Whistler, and I said, and I don't know, this might be the way I write from here on out, or I might go back to the way I used to write, or I might never write another book again. And then 2 days later, after the piece came out, Parade magazine said, Ann Patchett says she will never write another book again. Like, wow, slow news day.
How many people came and discovered Anne through Bel Canto?
Yeah, that people come up to me and they say, I've been reading you since your first book. And I'm like, no, you've been reading me since the first book of mine you read, which was not my first book.
Celebrating 25 years this year, right? Or
are we? Can you imagine the little book? I'm 25. I don't think we are celebrating it.
It's not?
I don't think so.
Oh, I am.
Okay, good.
So you did an annotated version where you got to kind of revisit it. Yes. How did that go? How did that come about? And what did you discover about the book that
I'm so glad you asked me. That's a great question, because I didn't tour or do anything for the Annotated Bel Canto, and it was a really cool project. Okay, there's a tiny, tiny little bookstore outside of Boston, and they got hard hit by COVID, as bookstores did, and they were trying to pay off bills. And so they asked, I think, 20 writers to annotate a first edition of one of their books, and I annotated Tom Lake. It had just come out. And so I got the book, and I wrote all over it. And because I am me, we had like 4 or 5 months to do it, but I did it that week. And so I wrote all over it, and then I thought, oh, this is really cool. This is actually a very interesting object. And I put it away. I'm not gonna mail it to them then, because I've got 5 months before it's due. And then 5 months go by, and it's time to mail it to them. And I thought, I don't really wanna give this to them. And I don't want to copy it, because then you break the spine and it's not nice anymore. So I got another copy of Tom Lake, and I copied all the annotations into a book that I could keep. And when I was copying, I thought, this is an interesting project. And so I sent my copy to my editor, and I said, what would you think about doing this as an object, as a project? And he said, yes, what book would you do? And I said, I would do Bel Canto. And so I had never read Bel Canto since it was published. And that's nothing to do with me. Nobody reads their books, and if they do, they're weird. And so I read it for the first time, at that point in 23 years, or however long it was, and I started writing all over it, and I kept going back again and again and writing more and more notes. But the part of it that I loved was the production, so that when it was all finished and they had reformatted the book, because I wanted it with a slightly larger trim size, they put a piece of vellum over every page. And then there were many tests of pens, and I wrote all of my notes again on the vellum, which they took off and put those into production. And it really looks just like my handwriting, just like I wrote all over the book. And I went to Catholic school for 12 years. And so people say to me, well, was that like some sort of a program where they could mimic your handwriting? And I was like, no, I actually just have really good handwriting.
Well, it's such a fun book. I particularly like when you would just be like, awkward.
Oh my gosh, because Bel Canto, I mean, there's a lot in it that was really great, and what was so interesting was, and this kind of goes back to one of the things they were talking about in the previous session of deflecting compliments or not being able to own what's good, but I am really far away from that book. And so I could read it and say, this is amazing. Look at what I'm doing here. I mean, look at the nerve. That book opens with a hostage situation, people with guns running into the room. Everyone is put on the ground and they are told not to move and not to speak. And that goes on for almost 100 pages. You want to know how not to open a novel? Like the first 100 pages. And I was so anxious when I was reading it, thinking, get up, talk, interact. But then I realized that the enormous anxiety that I was feeling as a reader was the anxiety that I wanted the readers to have. So that was great. It's also incredibly bad. Anytime I could use one description, I used 3. Anytime, well, there's just really no right time for an adverb, is it? But I used like 4, 5, 6 adverbs, and no one stopped me. I misspelled things. Every time a woman walks into a room, I talk about her hair and how it smells. How it smells like lilies, it smells like lemons, it smells like lavender. It was horrible.
I liked that part.
Not when you count them all up. I mean, it's fine, it is fine to say what a woman's hair smells like one time if you happen to be nuzzling her head, but otherwise, it's not appropriate.
Okay, you and I saw each other in Nashville last year around this same time, and you were writing one book. And I do not think Whistler was that book.
What month was it?
May. You were talking to Jenna at the Read with Jenna.
Okay, that was the month I changed horses.
So what happened?
So I had been writing a book for about a year, and I had been thinking about it for a long time before that. And my husband wanted to go on a trip. He wanted to go to Europe. And I was really struggling with this book. If you've read Tom Lake, Laura and Joe had 3 daughters. The youngest daughter was Nell, who wanted to be an actress. In this book, Nell moves to Bushwick with a rotten boyfriend, gets a job in a cupcake shop, and is trying to be an actress. It wasn't working. Anyway, Carl wanted to go to Europe, and I said, take your sister, because I really need some time to just be home and work on this book. And they left. They went to Amsterdam and Paris for 10 days, and on the second day, I thought, oh, I know what's wrong with this book, absolutely everything. And I threw it out. And I want to say that's late April. It must have been the new book when I saw you. So I threw it out on the second day, but then I have 8 days left in which I don't have to make dinner. And I thought, I don't want to waste this time. And I always have a long essay in the back of my mind that I want to write. And in this case, it was a piece about a glowworm cave in New Zealand where I had a little nervous breakdown. And I wrote this long essay for The New Yorker called Glowworms. And in that piece, one of the things is my friend Jim Fox dies. And Jim Fox was one of my best friends in life. And he died 2 years ago on his 85th birthday. And I am not getting emotional, I'm just choking. But what I realized when I was writing that essay is I could write Jim's voice. I wrote, just this little piece about him, but I thought, that's Jim. And I immediately thought, I want to write a book that's not about Jim and not about me, but is about our love. So it's not the facts of our relationship or our lives, but it is completely the love and the way we talk to one another. And somebody was interviewing me on the phone, and he said, the first thing he said was, well, clearly this is your most autobiographical novel. And I said, it is such an interesting thing to say because we've never met. So that joke.
I don't know you.
Right. How do you know it's autobiographical if we don't know each other? But I think that it feels very autobiographical because the love is very real.
There are some particular page numbers that I just love in Whistler.
Oh,
Who's
good.
read Whistler already? Wow, it's only
Wow.
out of that's a good
Guys.
number. So we will not do any spoilers.
We're not
for all
going
of
to
you.
wreck it. It's kind of, there aren't a lot of spoilers in this book anyway, but we won't tell them to you.
But on page 45, Daphne is talking about when childhood ends. And Anne and I were on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I already asked for this question, but I'm going to ask you again because I just think it's a fascinating concept of we all have a different opinion of when our childhood ended. So Anne, when do you feel your childhood ended?
And I said, I don't think it has. And my mother is 88, and she lives a mile away from me and my husband. And my sister and I have talked about this since that podcast. I was like, do you feel this way? But I feel like I am such a daughter. I am first and foremost, in a way, a daughter. And when I die, what it will say on my tombstone is, here lies a very, very good daughter. So I kind of feel like I'm still functioning as a child. I'm still working around my mother's schedule, trying to please her, trying to buoy her up and make her happy. And there I live at 62 as a child.
I love that answer.
Really? Is that worth a round of applause? I'm not so sure. Did you tell the part about the dog? Because that was actually
The dog was the best part.
The
and
dog
I could
was
not
the best
believe
part.
that you did.
So my mother has a dog who bites. He's always bitten. His name is Ewok. I don't know what he is. He was found by one of the Parnassus booksellers in a dumpster when he was a tiny puppy. There was a reason. And the dog is the love of my mother's life, and when she moved to independent senior living, the dog proceeded to bite everyone there. And the dog was always a biter, but the dog wasn't around other people. It didn't have as many opportunities. But especially in elevators, not good. And he weighs about 20 pounds, very dense, with a good ability to project himself straight up. So at some point, my mother lived on the 4th floor, and the people who run this place were so kind, and they gave her so much grace. And they said, listen, if you move to the 1st floor so that you will have a door that opens directly to the lawn, and you promise to never bring the dog into the public spaces of the building anymore, we'll let you keep the dog. And so she did. She moved downstairs to a much smaller, not nearly as nice apartment, and the first week proceeded to bring the dog twice into the building, and he bit people. And he was then officially evicted, so now he is our dog. And he and my dog, they love each other. They're living a fantastic life of not biting. But every night after I walk the dogs for the last time, I put Ewok in the car, and I drive him a mile over to my mother's, and I go in through the door, and they sleep together, and then at 6:30 in the morning, I wake up, and I pull the dog out of her sleeping arms, and when was my childhood over?
You know, this deserves the applause.
But Ewok!
Okay, next page number is page 86. You're talking about there's so much randomness to youth. The person assigned to share your room becomes your friend. The girl you pass on your way out the door becomes your wife. What random encounter from your life do you think had the most profound effect on you?
Every single encounter is random. I mean, I think about college. I think about the friends I had as a little girl. My God, you know, one of my best friends in life was a girl from second grade, Tavia Cathcart, who is all over all of my books. Random, random, random. And then your life splits, and it splits, and it splits because of these people who you meet. The last time I ever went to an artist colony, and the last time I will ever go to an artist colony, it was lovely, but enough, in Italy, and I met Patrick Ryan, who is my best friend in the whole wide world. And a lot of the reason why I say, and I think Patrick will say, we don't need to do this anymore. It's like, I don't want any more. I've got Patrick. I don't want any new friends. But those are the things that completely shape your life. And I also think of the flip side of that, the randomness that you miss, right? Like the car accident you weren't in, the days that you didn't die because you left the house, the phone was ringing and you went back in. You know, it goes both ways. There's a long essay in a book I wrote called These Precious Days about my friendship with Suki Raphael. And I'm gonna do this really briefly, but I was interviewing Tom Hanks for his book in DC, and we were backstage, and his assistant, Suki Raphael, was with us in the dark as we were waiting to go on, and I spoke to her for 2 minutes, and Tom and I went on and we did this, and then he was maybe interested in opening a bookstore, so Suki emailed me, and we would email each other maybe every 3 or 4 months, just one back and forth about that. She was a painter. We would talk a little bit about painting. Then I emailed her once, and I didn't hear back from her. Are you okay? Didn't hear back from her. And then I did, and she said, oh, I'm sorry. I was sick. I'm back at work now. Everything's fine. I said, oh, are you okay? And she said, I have pancreatic cancer, but I had surgery, and it was good. And then months go by, and I email, how are you? And she was like, it's come back. I'm trying to get into a clinical trial for recurrent pancreatic cancer. Carl and I are walking the dog one night, and I have never mentioned Suki Raphael to him because this is somebody that I email, 3 times a year. And I said, oh, I just heard from this woman that I don't actually know. I mean, I met her once in the dark. I wouldn't even recognize her. We've never spoken on the phone. She's trying to find a clinical trial for recurrent pancreatic cancer. And Carl said our hospital is doing more trials for recurrent pancreatic cancer than any hospital in the country. I call Suki. She gets on a plane the next day. She comes out because UCLA is about to start this same trial, but she needs to get in it stat. She's got 2 weeks before she can start. 3 days later, COVID. So she lives with us, and we don't leave the house, and it's the 3 of us. And it was the happiest time of my life. And that is randomness. And the thing to remember is that every single day there are at least 10, if not 100 opportunities to say, come on in, come inside. And we don't, because we can't, because it's everywhere always. But the times that we do, the times that we say, come inside, are the times that change your life and make your life so incredibly beautiful. Yeah. Nicholas Epley, the social psychologist, has written a book called A Little More Social that's just exactly about that. My friend Wendy Dodson interviewed me for her story the other day, and I said, oh, are you taking the ferry to Nantucket? And she said, no, I've got to be there earlier. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll see you when I get there. And then she said, she emailed me that night. She was like, I am taking the ferry because I want to be with you. I'm going to change my plans. I'm going to do that random thing. And so we got to take the ferry. And because of that, like, it's that little building block of friendships. Are you going to regret asking me this? 'Cause
I'm just like listening to everything you're saying.
you know, I interview so many people, and I'm always so grateful when they talk. Because there's that other interview. Yes, no. So I always feel like best to show up.
This was a perfect segue for what you were talking about, Come Inside. One of my favorite scenes in Whistler is a wedding scene. And when I was reading it, I was like, this seems so real, and I know it was fiction, but I was like, I have to ask her. Have you ever crashed a wedding?
So, yes. As a matter of fact, I love my husband so much, and he is a canceller. It used to really drive me out of my mind, and now I understand it is just part of his nature. His mother was a canceller. They come from a cancel culture. So, like, we will be walking out the door to something, and he's like, actually, and he won't go. So we were on our way to a wedding that was in New York, and he was like, I think maybe my throat is sore, and he didn't go. So I called Patrick, and I was like, I'm coming to New York to go to a wedding. Can you come with me tonight? And he said yes, because he's that kind of friend. And we went to this wedding, and it was dull. It was long. All weddings are dull. Sounds like it's giving me cues from the audience. Okay, anyway, we got through it.
This is recorded, so I hope that couple is not going to watch it.
They're so happy. They actually are. They're happy and they're great. And Patrick and I left at the appropriate time, and he was walking me back to my hotel, and we passed another wedding in a hotel. And I was like, let's have some fun. Let's dance. That wedding was over. They were at the part where everybody was drunk, and they were eating cake, and they were dancing, and we went to that wedding, and we had so much fun because no one had any expectations of us. No one knew us. It felt like incredibly private. And we had a great conversation, and we ate their cake, and we danced, and it turned out to be a magnificent, memorable evening. So randomness, take your joy where you can.
You think you're in those people's wedding photos?
Could be, could be.
Okay, I just heard recently that you did the audio for Whistler.
Yeah.
I didn't think you could top Tom Hanks or Meryl Streep, and then you did with yourself. How did that go? Did you enjoy that process?
Okay, another great question, Tim. Yes, and the audio director that I've worked with at HarperCollins for years, when she read the book, and we're very friendly, and I have recorded my own nonfiction books, and she said, I read Whistler, and I hear it in your voice, and I really want you to do the audio. And I've never done the fiction because I feel like you're supposed to be an actress, and I am not. And I was very flattered, and I said, yes, I'm gonna do it. And I went home, and I read the book aloud to the dogs. And it takes like 4 days. I mean, it's a lot. And I was terrible. I was just terrible. And I thought, okay, I have to read this again. And I read it out loud 4 times to the dogs before I went into the studio. And this is the way life works, friends, in case you're curious. If you spend 6 weeks practicing, you will get better. And by the time I went into the studio, I knew how to do it. I was confident, and I felt like I am good at this. And the director came, and she stays with me, and then we go to the studio every day, and her flight, it was a whole funny weather-related story, but delayed. She didn't get in until midnight. And we were going to go to the studio the next morning. And she said, what I want to do is I want you to record all of the scenes that take place in the past on the first day in one long take. And then we'll start back on the second day at the beginning, and I'll edit those together. And it was so smart. It just made absolute sense to record it that way. She said, your voice will be higher and lighter as you're on your first day, and it will get lower. I have a really low voice. It'll get lower as you go along. And it worked out beautifully. And the thing that I am most capable of doing in this life is being locked in a box by myself. That's my idea of heaven.
Talking to yourself?
Talking to myself, no one to bother me, no interruptions, doing one thing. Carl always says, I don't have attention deficit disorder, I have attention surplus disorder. And so I really like to just lock down on one thing. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to listen, and we can all listen too. We are partnering with Libro FM through the bookstores, and so if you buy a purchase of Whistler, you could also get the audiobook, and you can listen to Anne read it while you read it as well. So make sure to pick up one of those.
And let's just say, if you don't know what Libro FM is, it gives a portion of sales to your local independent bookstore, whichever one you like. So if you think Jeff Bezos maybe doesn't need that money, and I would like to give it to my, yeah.
How is the bookstore business going? How long have you had Parnassus now?
It's gonna be 15 years in November.
Are you celebrating that?
We do celebrate that. You get 15% off. We have a party, and on that day, and the staff is always like, what is going to happen when we're 23? What's going to happen when we're 36? I was like, I'll be dead. I don't care. But yeah, we are doing great. And a lot of bookstores are. I've met some terrific booksellers here. And it's one of those things, like bookstore owners, booksellers are always terrified to say that things are going fine because they're afraid that the evil eye will come down on them. But we're killing it, and the nicest part of that is the bookstore is not how I make my living. I used to have a partner. I now own the whole thing by myself, and we have a giant staff, and all of the profit in the store is divided equally and quarterly among the employees. And so, yeah. And I remember one of our booksellers, Rachel, who had come to us right out of college, and she was so happy working at the bookstore, and she said, my parents keep asking me when I'm gonna get a real job, and I wish this could be a real job. And I feel like my purpose on this earth is to figure out how I can make working in a bookstore a real job that you can keep for your entire life if that's what you want to do.
I also want to shout out Nantucket's very own Wendy Hudson, owner of Nantucket Book Partners. She just does such, she cares about this community so much, and I want to give her a round of applause. Is she in here? You have a fun series. You don't have a phone, but you do go on Instagram, and people love your Instagram presence. I love it when you.
I don't actually go on. I don't.
Oh, someone else posted.
But the bookstore takes care of all of that. Yeah.
And Friday is my favorite because if you are familiar, on Fridays she introduces a title, and if you haven't read it, it's new to you. So I have a kind of a quirky question here. If you had randomly gotten amnesia,
yes,
and you go to sleep at night and you forget all books that you've ever read, and you could wake up the next morning and everything would be new to you, what books would you constantly pick up to reread again?
I would pick up Niall Williams' This Is Happiness. Which, have you read that?
No.
It's just, yeah.
I'm out.
It's it's so spectacular. And here is the thing about me. The world that I live in is about fiction and nonfiction that's happening right now. One of the angriest I've been, and I have practically no temper, but I was with a friend and we were in a fancy situation, and there were journalists at that fancy situation, and one of those journalists said, "What are you reading now?" And my friend said, "The Collected Letters of Goethe." And I'm like, you had a chance. You had a chance. So I will also say that if I could wake up every day to a new world and read Buckeye again by Patrick Ryan, I would read Buckeye again and again. And I would read Kin by T.R.E. Jones again and again. I mean, seriously, I'm not just selling it, but these, it's not just, oh, these are people who happen to be here, but these are phenomenal novels that are being written right now. One of the things that I have become sort of Instagram famous for is a post I did of taking down David Brooks for saying that there, thanks, Patrick. For saying in an op-ed at the New York Times, like, where is literature? Why are there no great books being written now the way there used to be great books written? And I think there are such great books. And as the previous session showed, great minds. I mean, these three people are writing not just great books, but great minds of literature discussing literature. And we are, like bookstores, alive and well. And it makes maybe good news to say that bookstores are dying and literature's dying and nobody's reading. It's a lie. It's just a lie. Look at you. Look at you. You could be shopping right now. You could be on the beach. You're here to talk about books. And that's so beautiful.
I could keep going, but I'm running out of time, so I have to get to my speed round because it's my favorite part. Okay. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Whistler begins at the Met. Do you have a favorite piece of art?
I do, and I did a little film for the Met a couple of weeks ago. It hasn't come up yet about that. But my favorite piece of art in the Met is not the piece that I made the film about, because the piece of art that is my soul piece is beyond canceled. And it's a Balthus painting called Nude at the Mantle. And it is of a 12-year-old naked girl standing in front of a mantle. And it is the piece of art that I went to look at every single time I went to the Met all through college. Every time I went back to New York, I go back. They have it now in like a little dark cul-de-sac. They have the 4 big Balthus paintings because you're just not supposed to love those anymore. But they're, to my mind, quite empowering.
I'm gonna have to look that up. My new favorite piece of art is the Whistler art. Isn't this gorgeous?
It's so beautiful.
I ordered it from the artist because he sold 100, you signed 100, and I got one, and I was so excited I was one of the 100, but now I think you said
we're gonna do another run, because the entire run, so this, Noah Saterstrom did the cover for the Dutch House and for Whistler, and we did a series of 100 signed prints. I mean his art, but we both signed them, and they sold out in 1 minute. And it didn't cut off the sales. So then there are hundreds of people who are hurt. And I just said to Noah, drop the price, don't do a number, and we'll just sign them, and all the money goes to Noah. And so that's fantastic. You can still go to Noah Saterstrom's website and get the giclée, and it's glorious.
I can't wait. Okay, Daphne's stepfather in the book writes books on staying positive in life and staying grateful, and he has a tagline, look around this minute, what are you grateful for? So Ann Patchett, look around this minute, what are you grateful for?
I am not joking. I am grateful for you. I am grateful for all you do tirelessly in so many creative ways. If you're working with Ellen, if you're on your podcast, if you're doing something like this, if you're on the Today Show, you and I are doing the same thing. We have the same mission, which is to lift up literature and make sure people are reading. And I love and admire you and your work, and I'm grateful for you.
I promise I didn't pay her to say that. Thank you. I didn't ask that question to get that response.
You know, but it's true.
Okay, if you could invite 3 of your characters to dinner, who would be there?
I don't want to have dinner with them. I mean,
Not even Eddie?
well, I'd want to have dinner with Jim Fox. I'd want to have dinner with Jim Fox. I mean, yes, Eddie, but that's a weird question. I made them up. I have dinner with them every damn night. I'd like to branch out.
So you would cancel dinner on them.
Yeah.
Is there a book you credit with making you a reader?
Charlotte's Web, because that was the book, and not only that, we lived on a farm in Ashland City, Tennessee, and I begged my mother and stepfather to let me have a pig. And this was back in the old days when you got a pig, it was a pig. You know, it wasn't like a pug, it was a pig. And my stepfather took me to a pig farm for my 9th birthday, and they let the piglets out of the chute, and I said that one, which didn't make any difference because there were like 600 of them. And the farmer got a burlap sack, caught a piglet, stuck it in the burlap sack, thus the term pig in a poke. And they knotted it, we put it in the back seat of the Chevy Nova and drove home, and that was my pig. And that was because of Charlotte's Web, but because of Charlotte's Web and that pig, I became a vegetarian. So I have not eaten a pig since I got Arnold. Yeah. Wow.
Is there a writer?
Yeah, that name just, I can hear it landing across the... I was 9.
Is there a writer that made you want to be a writer?
Eudora Welty. And that is because when I was in, I don't know, 7th grade or whatever, and we had a big collected book of stories for English class, and 2 things. She was the only person in that book who was alive. So it was the date of her birth and then a dash and then the closed parentheses. And I was like, oh, alive. That's interesting. And the only woman. And so I thought, oh, there is a living woman writing stories. I could do this. It's really funny to remember how things used to be. Writers didn't come for school visits. You didn't think in terms of going to see a writer. And the first author event I ever went to when I was 16 years old, Eudora Welty came to Vanderbilt, and the aforementioned Tavia Cathcart and I went to see Eudora Welty, and she was sitting up on the stage, and we were in the front row, and before the event started, walked up the stairs on the stage like I alone in all the world had thought, it might be cool to get her to sign my book. And I asked her to sign. I didn't even know that was something people did. I thought I had invented it.
You might have.
And she signed my book. That's awesome. Yeah.
If you could pick up a book to read just the beauty of the language, what book would that be?
I'm going back to Niall Williams. I'm going back to This Is Happiness.
I got to pick up that book. I keep saying I would read Ann Patchett's grocery list. What's on your grocery list?
Oh, I thought, no, I'm sorry to edit you, but ask me whose grocery list I would read.
Okay. But you can tell me one thing on your grocery list? Not
like
pig.
we're always out of bananas. Who cares? Sorry.
Whose grocery list would you want to read?
I would read Elizabeth Strout's grocery list. Yes, I would. And her new book, The Things We Never Say, is spectacular.
It really is. Okay, last one. Page 63 of Whistler is this sentence: we all have our ministries. What is your ministry?
My ministry is to hold books up, to promote authors, and we have a foundation at the bookstore, and we bring authors and illustrators to the store for school visits, but the kids in Title I schools never get school visits because the way the financial model works is that if a children's book writer comes to a school, they send out a form in advance and say, if you want Sally to have the book, please send in $20. So authors and illustrators wind up going to either private schools or well-heeled public schools because that's the financial model. That is how the books are sold. So what we do, and we didn't invent this, a lot of other bookstores do this, is we bring the authors into Title I schools and give all of the kids a free book. When you own the bookstore, the books are half price. And it's amazing how far your book buying dollars can go when that's what you're doing. And I don't raise money for it. Anytime I do a public speaking event in which I'm paid, that money all goes directly to buying those books. And I feel, stop. I feel more than anything, that is why I'm here. Like, I am doing more for literature and the humanities and reading as a bookseller and somebody who's getting books to kids than I am as somebody who is writing the books. And it makes me happier. So.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Tim.
A couple of quick things, and we'll be signing outside, so make sure to get a copy of Whistler if you haven't. There is a lunch break coming up, and we do have a whole local author section at the Nantucket Athenaeum Great Hall that we'd love for you to go check out to support our local authors. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Anne Patchett.